For decades, classical economics relied on a highly convenient fiction, Homo economicus. This is the idea that human beings are rational, data-driven agents who always act to maximize their financial returns. But real-world behavior tells a different story. When volatility hits, investors don't optimize. They panic. They check their portfolios constantly, overwhelmed by the red numbers on the screen, and driven entirely by instinct. This document details the academic proof of our cognitive limits. Herbert Simon's concept of bounded rationality explains that humans lack the mental capacity to process endless complex data. Instead, our brains split decision-making into two modes: a slow analytical system 2 and a fast instinctive system 1. Because evaluating complex financial math demands immense analytical energy, investors experience cognitive fatigue. Their brains automatically default to that fast emotional system 1 to save energy. That triggers biases like loss aversion, where the psychological pain of losing a specific sum of money feels twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining that exact same amount. The predictable, irrational emotional responses wired into human psychology remain the primary obstacle to long-term wealth accumulation. To combat these emotional errors, the financial industry introduced the AI-powered Robo-Advisor. Algorithms do not experience cognitive fatigue. They don't feel fear, and they don't get tired of organizing the math. These platforms act as a form of behavioral scaffolding. By locking users into highly diversified, passive index funds, they remove the requirement for daily trading decisions, effectively stopping users from panic selling at the bottom of a market cycle. Yet leading financial researchers are now warning that by outsourcing our choices to a machine, we haven't eliminated risk. We have simply traded our emotional, human vulnerabilities for invisible, algorithmic ones. This creates a fascinating paradox. The precise technology engineered to save us from our own psychological flaws has quietly introduced a highly scaled systemic vulnerability into the market. When machine learning trains on decades of historical data, it doesn't correct structural market biases, it replicates them. In a 2024 case, an AI codified gender-based risk profiling from statistical patterns. Unlike a human harming a few clients, a biased algorithm instantly infects thousands of portfolios. Even without encoded prejudice, the rigid nature of robo-advisors creates massive blind spots. They force users into standard cookie-cutter asset allocations, ignoring clients whose non-traditional financial realities require a flexible approach. Algorithmic efficiency demands absolute conformity. If a retail client's life deviates from the machine's strict historical models, the system actively punishes them with unsuitable investments. This total reliance on algorithmic authority triggers a psychological phenomenon known as automation bias. This is the human tendency to over-defer to algorithmic authority, willingly ignoring our own better judgment simply because a computer made the recommendation. Over time, users become alienated from their own assets. They slowly unlearn erosion of financial literacy. This dependence becomes incredibly dangerous when we hit the black box problem. Modern neural networks are so dense and complex that even the developers who built them cannot trace exactly how the system arrived at a specific financial recommendation. This lack of explainability has triggered direct warnings from federal regulators, including the SEC and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. When a human gives bad advice, accountability is clear. But when an algorithm fails a user, the liability is hopelessly diffused across data providers, code developers, and deploying institutions. Nobody takes responsibility. While robo-advisors at least attempt to use behavioral science to protect users, a separate class of fintech applications actively weaponizes that same science against them. Mobile brokerages bypass System 2 thinking, using targeted notifications and high-stimulus interfaces to trigger dopamine releases, ensuring users react on System 1 impulse. This gamified design encourages excessive trading. Their profit model relies entirely on generating payment for order flow revenue from constant transaction volume. While algorithms can provide structural protection against panic, they become predatory the moment corporate profit models diverge from individual financial health. AI and automated advisors are not inherently dangerous. Given the volume and velocity of modern markets, they are permanent, necessary tools for navigating wealth management. But users must demand algorithmic transparency. We must reject black box advice, push back against gamified manipulation, and actively maintain our own baseline of financial literacy. We can safely delegate the daily execution of our finances to an algorithm, but we can never delegate the ultimate responsibility for our financial survival. So the question isn't whether you should trust AI. It's whether you understand exactly where its blind spots begin and yours end. That's the real skill going forward. If this made you think twice about where you've handed over control, subscribe. I break down these AI and automation risks every week. And drop a comment. Where in your own work have you caught yourself trusting the machine a little too much? Let's talk about it.